right now by New York City Councilman Jumaane Williams.
How are you?
Thanks for joining us.
Nice to see you.
Nice
Good to see you again. You were at our Brooklyn event last year. We're doing it for the second year. One thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because I know you put out a statement early this morning about, is the unfortunate video we saw of police beating up a black man in a Target in Flatbush. I know you pointed out again, this is another example of police violence against people of color. I know this is something that you've been working very hard to address. So first, your comments on the incident that happened today.
Sure, I put it out with my colleague, Assemblyman Rodney Bishop. And of course, you just get tired of seeing these videos. We also wanted to make sure that people understood what happened before.
Yep.
The gentleman apparently was there the day before, had some interactions not pleasant with some of the staffers. One of the staffers felt unsafe. It came back, and they actually called the police to help get him to leave. And so we understand that. We also understood that it appeared that when he was crouched, however he got there, his hands were underneath him, and I'm sure that can be disheartening for a police officer. The primary question was the pummeling with the fists. My question is that department procedure when you're trying to get someone to comply. If it's not, what's going to be done about it? Was it following protocol, or was it frustrated officers? And that seems to be when the community actually got alarmed. Well, it didn't seem like it was the arrest itself. It was the motion of the fist for a good 20, 30 seconds. And the question is that necessary? Is that level of force used equally across the city, regardless of neighborhood, race, and class? And I think a lot of people will say no, and that's what the big issue is about. But we also want to be careful so that we understand that in the uncertainty of policing, a police officer doesn't know what they're going to go into. So we want to make sure we balance that out. But we have very real, not perceived, but very real issues with over-policing that we have to continue to address.
As Brooklyn, and we're celebrating the growth of Brooklyn, the coming into this age, finally being a borough of where the future is being looked at, and it isn't Manhattan anymore. It's like they ran out of space in Manhattan and of creative people, I guess. But going back to that incident, have you spoken to the commissioner, to Bratton? Did you call? Where do we have to take this conversation? Because, like you state, it's repeated cases of people of color, young men that are black and Latino and Asians who actually get beat up most of the time. What is it that they don't get the excessive force part? Is it that we invite? Is it the attitude of the person?
So, one, I just want to, you mentioned obviously the growth of Brooklyn, which we're excited about, but not all of Brooklyn is growing. So we want to make sure there are parts of Brooklyn that aren't seeing the growth that actually helped Brooklyn breathe this brand that people want to come to. So we want to make sure that growth extends across Brooklyn and not just some sections of Brooklyn.
What parts are those that are being ignored?
I think there's some parts of southern Brooklyn that are being ignored. It seems
and we highlighted some of those in the magazine. I wanted to point out that it's not all roses in Brooklyn right now.
Yeah. So we just want to make sure we keep that in mind, that the growth continues. I think with the police community relations, one, it's a continuing conversation. I think every time something happens policy-wise, people think, oh, we fixed it. And no, it's a continuing conversation that we have to keep pushing. And there has been a reluctance to fully acknowledge that it's not just historics, but it's present day. What's happening present day is based on race, is based on class, period. We have to put a period on that so that we can fix it. But some people are hesitant to do that. I think the discussion is becoming more honest, and the retraining, I think, is good. What we're missing is accountability. So when something happens and the police officer has done something wrong, there should be accountability, and we haven't seen that across the board. I think there was a case today, they just said that the young man that was thrown through a plate glass window, that the officer did use excessive force, so we want to see what's going to happen with that. But I always like to point out, all the issues that we're talking about with the policing, we have to bring those conversations to other areas because they're just as bad in housing, at shared housing and buildings. They're just as bad as education, and they're destroying these communities with the same race class issues. It just happens much slower. So we don't see the fever and the fervor that we should see in those areas, but we do see with the policing, which is good. We have to fix that. But if we don't fix the other issues, we don't fix education, we don't fix housing, we don't fix the unemployment rate, it's a vicious cycle that we're going to continue.
And to that point, I know you had to run very shortly, but to that point, we had the extra police officers, the 1,300 police officers that went through. You also put out a statement very shortly after the budget came out that there should have been more money for youth employment. Is it something you highlighted as a way to attack the problem, I guess, from a different angle? Like,
I think the Black Latino Asian Caucus put the statement on. I re-forwarded it. It would have been a great progressive move to say, look, we put 1,300 additional police officers, and every child that wants a job is going to have one.
Yeah.
Public safety cannot just remain in the policing domain. Public safety has to incorporate all of these other things, and I think that's one of the issue. If we only address public safety with policing, there's going to be over-policing, and so jobs is one of the most critical things that we can find funding for if we make it a priority.
Did you feel like your colleagues in the city council are receptive to that message?
Oh yes, I believe they are. I think it's going to take some time in the way the cycle goes, but I think if we found $170 million for the police officers, I think we should be able to find $100 million for some youth so that every child does have a job. But we did find $34 million, which I'm happy about. We upped the amount of SYP. There was a couple of new programs. Councilmember Jalissa Ferreras has that all year round. We put some more funding into the Gun Violence Task Force, the crisis management system that's very specific to the places that have the crime. My issue is that if we're going to send police there, the other agencies should use the same data and send other resources
I'll
as
give
well.
you in the exit question. Last Thursday we had Commissioner Bratton at a breakfast, and he said that during his 40 years of policing, he got the best budget, biggest budget ever. He was so happy, so elated. So you're going to give him a call and find out what he's going to do in terms of the training?
Well, what I want to find out is what's happening with the budgets of DYCD, what's happening in the budgets with DOH, MH. Those are the questions. We have to link those resources. We have to link those agencies. HPD, they have to be fully funded. They have to be looking at the same data and saying, okay, if we're sending police, we're actually putting the police in a bad situation. We're putting the community, obviously, in a bad situation. If we're not dealing with that structural problem, police can't solve housing. They can't solve poverty. They can't solve the educational issues. So it's unfair to everybody. And then you add that, the historical racial component or class component, it's a recipe for disaster. And so nationally, I'm glad this conversation is happening, and I think it needs to continue and hopefully broaden.
Great. City Councilman Jumaane Williams, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoy the night.